Call to order the Environment Committee. Today, I'm Gail Cederberg, and welcome everybody. It's June 9th, 2026. We're going to kick off the meeting by acknowledging the Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement. We usually will read that at the beginning of July, once a quarter, but I ask everybody to read through that and understand the regions and the application of that to the work that we do here at the council. Approval of the agenda. We've received the agenda. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, without objection, the agenda is approved. Next is the approval of the May 12th Environment Committee minutes. Any edits or changes that anybody had? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Second, thank you so much. Moved by Councilmember Morales, seconded by Councilmember Carter. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries and the minutes are approved. Thank you so much. Today, we don't have any items on our consent agenda today. We'll wait. We have a full house. This is wonderful. Just take a quick pause. Thank you, Councilmember Lindstrom. So we'll move to our first non-consent business item, the one and only non-consent business item, and it is item number 2026-78, JT 2026 Budget Amendment, second quarter. And Adam Gordon is here to give a presentation and talk about it. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and council members.
Yeah, no point in that.
So I'm here this evening to present a business item requesting a transfer of funding from our 8086 North Area Interceptor Improvements program to program 8088, our St. Paul Interceptor System Improvements. And the reason for the transfer is both in terms of some cost escalation on one project, Grass Lake Interceptor, which we'll talk a little bit more about, and also 1MS 100 condition assessment, which is more of a case of timing and our opportunity to advance that project. To note here, we're talking about programs. Each of we have programs within the Interceptor Capital Improvements Program, and it's kind of like managing wallets. And when I first started working as a manager, we had 17 different programs in the Interceptor system. Now, if you can imagine walking into a grocery store with 17 wallets, it would get to be a little bit impossible. I've said about trying to reduce that and simplify the nature of the program so that things made more sense. And to date, we're down to about 8 wallets or programs within the Interceptor system. But even so, when we go through cash flows and we go through timing of projects and what information we have at the beginning of the year, sometimes by the end of the year or even middle of the year, it looks a little different. Our outlook looks a little different, and then we have to rebalance some funds around. So we're not asking for any additional funding for the capital improvements program, but just the adjustment between funding between programs so we can better deliver these projects. I should be advancing slides. So that slide I was on. I'm out of practice. So the Grass Lake Interceptor Rehabilitation Project. It's a project where we have pipe that's shown in the map as being along Grass Lake, but those adjacent areas are not along the shoreline. They're actually in the lake. And this is because of the hydrology of time and the water levels within the local lakes have risen, and that shoreline interceptor is no longer shoreline, but it's in the lake. So that makes it inaccessible. We can't adequately assess its condition. And we've been working very closely with Ramsey County Parks and how we can reroute that pipe within the narrow corridor between the railroad and the shoreline to have that a more accessible route and also preserve the park. Parts of that pipe are 30 feet deep, and the impacts, if we were just to open cut or to cut down those hill areas to have access at the new pipe location would have been detrimental to the park, and so we've really worked hard at attempting to minimize our impacts to the park. There's a lot of users of the park. There's a trail that goes around the park right in the same location that we're placing the new pipe. So we're looking at the use of more tunnel boring and also and minimizing the impacts to the park. And there are a lot of fauna and other species and a lot of oaks in that park that we're trying to preserve as much as we possibly can. And once we've addressed that new pipe, we'll have better access to structures and we'll build better collective condition assessments in the future. And we won't be taking on I&I from water that's above the structures. So we're looking at a cost that increased on that very project. On the next project I want to present, we have the 1MS 100 condition assessment project. This is a sub-project or closely related to 1MS 100 facility planning that we're currently doing. The 1MS 100 interceptor is about a 10-mile long interceptor pipe. It was constructed between 1934 and 1938. It has diameters of up to 13 feet, 10 inches. Parts of it are about 200 feet deep, and it's right below I-94. So it has very limited access, has a high amount of usage right above it. This pipe takes on about 97% of the flow that goes to the Metropolitan Wastewater Treatment, or Metropolitan Wastewater. I'm not caught up on my acronyms. The Water Resource Recovery Facility. I still have it in here as wastewater treatment plant. So it's a highly critical piece of our infrastructure, and we are looking at anything possible to advance our facility planning and our condition assessment work. And we're looking at advancing a condition assessment contract to get into that pipe and to use the technologies we want to use is equivalent to a large construction project. And we need to complete the condition assessment work before we can finish the facility planning. So we would like to advance that contract by the end of this year. In order to do so, since it wasn't originally programmed in the St. Paul program, we'd like to transfer monies from that were unused in the St. Paul or in the North Area program to get this initiated. Better shown by the next page. So we're proposing to take $13 million from the 8086 North Area Interceptor Improvements Program and transfer it to the 8088 St. Paul Interceptor System Improvements Program. And like I said, this is not an increase to the capital program, but just an adjustment. And so the proposed action for tonight that we're requesting is that the Metropolitan Council amend the 2026 Unified Budget Authorized Capital Program, ACP, with a reallocation of $13 million as indicated in accordance with the capital program, environmental services table 10, and capital program table attachment 3. And with that, I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter?
I was just wondering what two districts, North Area and St. Paul, what two districts are those?
There's
Councilmember Lindstrom.
District 10 for the Grass Lake project, Shoreview area.
correct.
Okay. So
And-
they're two different districts.
They're different districts, yes.
Okay, I didn't know that was done, so that's why I was curious about it. It typically is done if it's in the same district, or it doesn't matter?
I have a blind eye towards districts.
Okay,
I'm only working within our funding programs.
okay,
And this request is not to move things between districts, but just to move things funding-wise to keep things rolling. It doesn't actually affect any of the programs or the projects, I should say, the projects that are now underway within the 8086 program. There was plenty of funding there, excess of more than 13 million, and an easy transfer to make up the timing. And as we get towards next month, or the month, actually August we'll be back in here with the proposal for the 2027 capital improvements program. We'll again rebalance those monies to keep those projects sustained.
okay, so it's a pretty normal to move like that, okay.
Councilmember Lee, did you have a
Yeah.
comment?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I'm not trying to be smart, but the first pipe back then when we laid it, did we purposely put it in the lake or did the lake grow to flood it?
So, yes, Madam Chair, the Councilmember Lee, the levels of lakes in that very area, because of the urban hydrology, have been rising. And it has, I don't know, I know it has to do with lots of drainage ways in the area and how they've developed. And so it was not put in the lake initially, it was put outside the lake, but the lake levels have increased considerably in Grass Lake and Snail Lake, that's just to the north of it. And that's what's caused our pipe to actually be in the water.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Jenkins?
So I apologize, I don't remember the name of the project, but is this going to be easier or harder with the St. Paul Interceptor project, almost coinciding with the Lilydale project and the crossing there?
Lilydale project, that's down parallel to 35E.
But I noticed on your map they connect.
We'll go back to the map. Oh, so you're probably talking about 1MS 100. And those interceptors, there's a lot of interceptors that come into 1MS 100. Minneapolis and everything to the west comes into MS 100 as well as to the north. We have a major interceptor that you can kind of see it there. It follows the 7th Street, and that's the one that connects to the Mendota Heights Lilydale siphon interceptor. So this doesn't, with the changes that we're proposing here and the advancement of any projects, they don't affect any of the other projects that we have either in planning, design, or construction within the region.
I have a question. So how long would the condition assessment of this very long pipe take, or do you target it because you know maybe there's issues? I mean, technically, it's going to be a challenge, like you said.
It is technically a challenge. Like I said, it's 200 feet deep. We're getting into a 13-foot diameter tunnel.
Row a boat.
It also is half flow, so there's a considerable amount of flow in the tunnel. We're using specialty technologies to observe what's going on below the water level, as well as what we can observe over the water level. We have enough indication from our previous assessments that the entire length needs to be reassessed. So there are many locations that we want to go back to, and that was in the previous assessment about 10 years ago, and observe them. And just looking at the changes between the different condition assessments, it urges us to fully perform a condition assessment along the whole alignment.
Okay, thank you.
And as far as timing, we're hopeful that if we can get our contract kicked off this fall and under construction next year, that we'll be able to get most results in by summer so that we can complete our facility plan. Usually we have facility plan hearings by fall, usually around end of August or September. So that would queue us up pretty well for getting facility plan approval by the MPCA.
Oh, that's great. That's a lot quicker than I was thinking for such a big project, so well done. Any other last comments or anything? Seeing none, we have the proposed action that the Metropolitan Council amend the 2026 budget, authorized capital program, ACP, with a reallocation of $13 million as indicated in accordance with the capital program Environmental Services Table 10 and the capital program table attachment 3. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Morales, seconded by Jenkins. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you so much, and
Thank you.
Thank you so much for presenting and answering our questions. We look forward to hearing more about it when it kicks up and gets started, so thank
Yes.
you. So that's all for our non-consent business. Our next item is an information item, and we're going to be learning about the 2027 preliminary budget rates and workshop, and we have Christine Dwyer here to give us a presentation. Thank you for coming today.
Let's do that.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chair, Madam Chair Cedarburg and council members, my name is Christine Dwyer. I am the Director of Finance for Environmental Services. Thank you for having me here this afternoon. I joined the council late last September, so this is my first cycle through the budgeting process. Over the last couple of months, I've spent a lot of time meeting with all of the different business unit leaders to understand their needs and to balance our priorities. We're really focused on setting realistic goals and identifying our needs and resources. Over the past few years, Environmental Services has had some favorable budget variances, and we recognize the need to tighten our assumptions. We focus on our mission, which is to partner, plan, and provide services to protect our region's water. Today, I'm going to walk you through the proposed 2027 budget, which is the basis for determining our wastewater fees. Each community pays the fee based on their relative portion of the wastewater flow against the total operating cost. So it is an allocation. The increase in our budget will determine the total increase in the wastewater charge, but each community will pay above or below depending on the change in flow that each community has relative to the total. So as you may hear from your individual communities, I will give you kind of what our total increase is relative to our budget, but their individual increases may be different depending on their change in flow and how that changed relative to the total. We are, in the coming slides, I'm going to review with you the proposed budgets, the cost drivers, the expenses, the debt, our sewer availability program, and the progress we have there, our industrial waste fees, as well as areas of uncertainty. So at the center of our mission is our customer communities, and we are committed to providing reliable service at affordable rates. Our goal has been and continues to be to keep our overall rate increases between 4% to 6%. This year, we will provide some relief with a 3.5% increase, and we will be using some of our reserves that we've earned in the past year to offset some of the operational expenses. In terms of our sewer availability unit charge, which I'll go into more detail on that, exactly what that is and what this means, but we are keeping that rate flat, and we have consistently kept that rate flat over the past 12 years. Our industrial strength charges are going up 7.2%, and then our industrial permit fees are going up at, on average, about 3.5%. It varies depending on what permit it is and how much it increases, so that averages out to 3.5. On this slide, I'll just walk you through some key variables that are impacting our cost. So we have a 3.5% increase in our total operating budget for our fees translates into about $11 million. The items the cost drivers that I point out here are our main cost drivers. Of course, they'll total more than that. As I mentioned, we are offsetting some of the increase with our reserve. Labor and benefit increases are going up about 6.2%. This is one of our largest expense categories, and it's really increasing due to inflation, turnover, temporary leaves of absences, and some business process improvements. Our interdivisional charge is increasing about $4.3 million, and you can think of the interdivisional charges like shared services. So these are the services that we share with regional administration, so our legal, HR, accounting, and information services. And these, the main driving up our shared services expenses are our technology investments. So we have a lot of aging infrastructure, kind of technology that's at end of life and needing to be improved. We're in the process of looking at a new ERP system, and we're also improving our cybersecurity. Next, we have our materials and supplies are increasing about $2.3 million, and that's really due to inflationary and cost increases. Chemicals are going up $2.2 million, which is also related to inflation and really a lot to the high fuel prices that we're seeing, as oil is an input to some of the chemicals that we use. Our debt service, which is our largest or one of our largest expenses, is going up $2 million due to some additional investments that we're making on our infrastructure, and I'll go into more detail on that in some upcoming slides. And then our utilities are going up about $1.3 million. So if we look at our total revenues for 2027, we're expecting $411 million in revenues. The largest revenue source that we have is our municipal wastewater fees, which make up about 78% of our revenues. And again, this is our fee for service. We don't charge any taxes or receive any funds from the state or local governments, other than appropriations due to grant monies that we receive for specific programs. We also have our transfer from the SAC, which is our sewer availability charge. So that charge is charged to our municipalities for new development that occurs to pay for the reserve capacity that we have in our system. And we transfer in about 30% of our debt service charges to offset, to pay for that infrastructure development. That makes up about 11% of our revenues. Industrial waste charges make up about 6% of our revenues. And we will be using the reserve fund, as I mentioned, which is about 3%. And then with the other there, about 1%, that is mostly due to investment income on our reserve balances. This is just a recap of our expenses. So again, we're using $411 million worth of expense. As I mentioned previously, our debt service, which is one of our largest expenses, makes up 37% of our expense budget, but it's also one of the most important as we maintain our infrastructure to support our communities. Advances in technology have allowed us greater access to safely assess the conditions of our pipes and prioritize our critical needs. We've also been balancing just understanding what capacity that we have to address these needs, and have been working on that, as well as balancing that against dependencies and coordinating the needs with communities as well as other agencies. So we have prioritized investments in our improving our infrastructure as we've understood the needs of our infrastructure. We also are currently implementing an asset management system, which will help us manage the life cycle of our equipment and resources as we move forward. The second biggest expense bucket that we have is our salaries and benefits, which makes up about 26% of our expense budget. And I'll get into more details on what's driving these costs in a second, in a later slide. The materials and supplies and chemicals, as well as interdivisional charges, both make up about 9% of the total cost. Consulting and contracted services and utilities make up about 7% and 6% respectively. And then our PAYGO fund, you see there the small green sliver, which makes up about 3%. The PAYGO fund is a fund that we have to use operational dollars to pay for capital projects, typically those that have a useful life of less than 20 years, or other smaller projects that we have. So we do a lot, and that makes up about $13 million. And we'll look at that in more detail in a second as well. And then we have the other bucket there, which makes up about 2%, and that's related to some pass-through grant activity or other miscellaneous expenses like subscriptions, development costs, or travel. So this is a deeper dive look at our labor. We are planning for 764 FTEs, which are full-time equivalents, which includes our dedicated staff, which includes operators, engineers, scientists, and other support staff. If we add in overtime, that would equate to about 788 full-time equivalents with overtime. Of course, we're never fully staffed, and we plan for about 45 vacancies in our numbers as well. We have growth of about 27 full-time equivalents in 2027, and the key areas that are making up that growth are in our maintenance team, our project engineers as we handle the additional volume of projects, scientists, and some additional support staff. We value people and prioritize recruiting and developing and retaining a diverse and high-performing workforce. We encourage continuous improvement and adapting to the changing world. We have many transformation projects with the new ERP project, as I mentioned, as well as some other upgrades in our software systems. We also have the aging infrastructure and are focusing on energy efficiency and more sustainability. And we continue to look for solutions for areas of emerging contaminants of emerging concern. The next slide you'll see is our projected debt service charge. And this kind of gives us a view of the changes from 2018 through our projected 2031. And as you can see in the middle of the graph there, the most recent 4 years, our debt service charge has been relatively flat. And then, of course, this year we're seeing a decline of about $7 million. We do see that start to increase as we go into 27 and beyond, as we prioritize the needed infrastructure investments and begin to ramp up our capacity to address those. This is still a work in progress as we test how much we can do and how quickly we can do it. But we do have a number of large projects ongoing, one of those being the fourth incinerator project at the Metro plant, which is on a design build, which allows us to move more quickly and spend through resources faster. Also upcoming, we have the new Crow River plant that we're planning for, so as a number of other expensive infrastructure projects. So we'll continue to kind of model this and understand, like I said, what our capacity is to address these needs and how quickly we can address them within the constraints that we have. Looking at our outstanding debt, and similarly, you can see this line is kind of flattened out there from 22 to 25, dropped a little bit in 26, but we did add on some additional debt this year, as I said, to address some of those infrastructure needs. So we're spending much more this year, 274. We expect that to level out at around 244 million going forward. That's GO bonds of 200 million and PFA funding of about 44 million. But again, it's all a matter of, as we model this out going forward, looking at our risk, our condition assessments, our capacity to address the needs, the complexity of the projects, and coordinating with other communities as well as other agencies. Our debt per capita so far has been relatively low. We're on the bottom end of comparable communities at $406 per capita. I do expect that this survey was based on the 2024. We are waiting for another update, but I do expect that other communities facing the same issues that we are with aging infrastructure that will kind of, as we increase our spending, I think we'll see others increase as well, but we'll wait to see how this comparison comes out as we move forward. I mentioned the pay-as-you-go fund. So this is our PAYGO fund as we reference it. So these are using our operating dollars to fund some of our capital projects. Generally, as I said, projects that have a life less than 20 years, or just generally, smaller projects that need to be done. We have been, we increased the spending in this area in 2026 to $13 million. We did keep that consistent in 2027 and at $13 million. In the past, we have used some of the SAC reserve to offset some of this funding. And this year we did not, but as I said, we'll continue to really look at going forward how we balance the needs of our capital program going forward against our SAC reserve. And we have seen that in upcoming slides, our SAC reserve is coming down. So we need to carefully look at that as far as what the needs will be going forward, how we balance any cost increases we have in that program potentially. Which that brings us to our SAC reserve. So again, sewer availability charge, which is used to pay for and maintain reserve capacity in our system. The charge currently is, per SAC unit, is $2,485. It's been flat for the last 12 years. We've had strong, and we've been able to keep it that way because there's been strong development activity in recent years and an overall strong reserve balance and a very relatively consistent capital spend. And as we look at the SAC units, the trend in SAC units from 2015 through 2025, this past year we were just over 16,000 SAC units, and that's slightly below our average for the last 20 years, which would be about 17,000 units. It was a decline from 2024 of about 5%. We saw a decline in residential and commercial building, and it was offset slightly by some increases in industrial development. So this is our SAC reserve account, which has a balance in it of just over $114 million, and the balance of this account is generated from the SAC fees that we charge. So those 16,000 SAC units are the input, and then we take money out and transfer it to offset the debt service, which is about 30% of the debt service. So depending on how those two things balance out, we'll see whether it grows or declines. So as you can see in the past few years, the balance has been declining, so we've been taking out more than has been going in, as we've seen in recent years a reduction in the development in the SAC units. The red line on the graph is the minimum balance that we need to maintain in the account, which is just over $55 million, and that's based on the average, the last 5-year average of the SAC transfers. So looking at our retail sewer rates, because as I mentioned, affordability is a key concern for us with our communities. We are 35% lower than our peer agencies. This was based on the 2024 NACWA survey, and we'll continue to focus on this metric as we move forward. So just a quick recap of where we've been with our rates and where we're going and where we are today. So in 2024 through 2026, we were definitely at the upper end or slightly exceeding where we expect to be in that kind of 4 to 6% target range. This year, as I mentioned, we are at the 3.5%, but we will continue to develop our plans as we look and project out the next 5 to 10 years. But again, it's our goal to try to keep within that 4 to 6% range and keep it affordable for our communities. So just looking here on Just recapping here some areas of increasing uncertainty, and as we just balance our needs against kind of the challenges that we face. Of course, regulatory compliance is a big one in terms of the contaminants of growing concern, the nitrates, the PFAS, the sulfates, and looking at regulations, potential regulations, and ways to treat for those contaminants, as well as partner with other agencies and communities to address those issues. Security risk, both physical and cybersecurity, as well as the funds that we get to support our infrastructure in the reduced funding that we've seen from the federal government. Our infrastructure, this is kind of a key priority for us as we do have an aging infrastructure. And as I said, it's been an opportunity for us to be able to use some of the new technology to really be able to assess the conditions of that and prioritize that as we go forward. But also looking at climate change impacts and how we mitigate those. Labor, there's competition for a shrinking and skilled labor force, which we all face. And then the geopolitical volatility that we're seeing in the world right now, affecting our prices on chemicals, energy, materials, and also the increased tariffs that we've seen. Real quick, I'll just go through our proposed wastewater, industrial waste rates. So we do charge our industrial customers strength charges, load charges, and permit fees. So our strength charges are going up anywhere from 7.2 to 8.4%, and that's because the increased cost to treat that type of waste. Our load charges are increasing anywhere from like 4% up to 5%, as you can see there. And then the permit fees, as I mentioned, vary in cost and increase, on average about 3.5%. So just in terms of our process, I mean, this is still the preliminary budget. We're still going through and sharing it with our customers and getting feedback, sharing it with you, as well as our regional administration. So we've done industrial workshops, both in person and virtually, on May 12th with our industrial customers. We are here today reviewing this initial preliminary budget with all of you. We've started our customer meetings and reviewing the budget with our municipal waste customers and sharing with them what they can expect as their wastewater rate increases. So we had one on June 4th, which was a virtual one. We are having an in-person one on June 16th. We'll be coming back to you in July to just review the feedback that we get from those meetings and kind of officially adopt our rate increase. And then in later July, meet with the full council, similarly adopt the rate increase, and then later in August, kind of formally adopt our preliminary budgets. And with that, I'll open it up to questions. I know that was a lot of information.
Do we have any questions? Councilmember Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I remember correctly, the pay-go that we did with SAC money is like credit for the future, right?
So thank you for the question, Council Member. We did use the SAC monies to fund some of the pay-go dollars, and some of that in excess of the 30% for the capacity, we do have to pay back to our reserve. So we are making that transfer back into that fund. And that is why, being that we already had that transfer coming, I didn't use it this year because we didn't really need to. And I wanted to reserve that balance as we look at really trying to determine where we are with where we're going with our capital, with our infrastructure spending and our debt spending going forward, to make sure that we understand what that what our reserve capacity can handle going forward.
Councilmember Wolf?
So that chart you had of the SAC reserve balances is actually not going down that much because of the pay-go, or how does that work? Does that take into account the credit for the pay-go for the future or not?
The chart that I had was just the actuals and kind of where we are today. So there is, it's a small amount that gets paid back because it's only the 13 million and it was only partially funded for a few years. So it's not all that much that gets paid back. There is also another factor in there is the interest that we get for that reserve balance. So that's also a factor that offsets that. So that's why you don't see it decline quite as much. But if we look at, I can just back up here. So this is where, like where you see that dark blue line is where we used the SAC reserves to offset some of that funding for the PAYGO. So just during that section of years is when we use that. And so, as I mentioned, part of that funds that 30% of reserve capacity is fine. It's just that excess capacity that we used in like 22, 23, and 24.
But if you could go forward to one more, that one.
Yep.
No, keep going. That one.
Yep.
So is the green line the SAC reserve balance with or without the credit of the PAYGO that would be credited to them in the future?
That is the SAC reserve balance as of today. So that's with that credit
So there's
taken out
actually
already.
more.
So that, yeah, so that as
Okay.
that gets paid back in, that will
Okay.
balance out. So you won't see it decline quite as much because it'll get paid back in, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wolf, for that question. It's lots of moving parts here, and I appreciate, just being able to answer that kind of question. And, we really want to let our customers know that we're tracking the money and the funds as well. So, Councilmember Jenkins?
So, perfect slide. I want to dovetail off Councilmember Wolf. With the reserve balance, we've got the policy minimum balance. Is that minimum balance a target, or is that like a policy bare minimum?
I believe it's a policy bare minimum. It's not a target.
So follow-up to that is, because sometimes if you have so much in reserve that could be used otherwise, I'm trying to gather if that gap is a healthy gap, or if we have more in reserve than we may legitimately need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Being relatively new to the council, I am getting my hands around what that looks like. And definitely, as I said, I think we need to take a step back and really plan carefully as we are increasing our spending to address some of these infrastructure needs. And this is a key component that helps fund that. Right. So I want to make sure that as we project this out, that we are mindful of how much we have, how much we will need, because as our debt goes up, 30% of that is funded by this, so that our needs of what we take out will go also up. It's also dependent upon our outlook and say, what's the development going to look like? How many units are there going to be? Will we continue to see this decline, or will that go up? So we'll do some modeling and some what-if scenarios, and then develop that trigger point of when is it that we need to potentially consider increasing the SAC rate, which has stayed consistent for the last 12 years. So, those are some things that we really need to kind of model and measure and monitor as we look forward over the next several years.
Councilmember Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can provide some historical context on that. So if you look at the beginning of the chart, it was a little below 100 million. The council had tried not to get over 100 million because they were afraid that it was going to look like we were banking too much money. And then all development stopped. Nobody ever thought all development would stop. It would be, you'd see slowdowns in one part of the region and it all balanced out until that. So that's one of the things that we want to avoid, is having that again. And that's part of why we went to doing some PAYGO, was so it doesn't look like a giant surplus, but there's cushion in there.
Okay. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And just a comment on, you had a slide on the increasing uncertainties. And I appreciate that because seems like things are getting more complex, potentially bigger risks for emerging contaminants, infrastructure with the aging that we're hearing. And so having that reserve is probably necessary. I mean, if you had a confluence of all those things happening within 12 or 18 months, you know, you wouldn't think that would happen, but you can't say it won't happen either. So I appreciate that modeling and that balancing, and, you know, maybe you'll be coming back to us with what you've learned as you step into this role and kind of bring things back together, because you can look at all of those and you don't want them all to happen at once, but they could, you know, and that's a small percentage, but they still could. And so I think that that's where our customers, and I'm a customer, really appreciate you kind of looking forward and having that vision and kind of keeping track of that. So when I flush my toilet in Monterey, you know, it could make its way to the Metro plant and be treated. So I appreciate that. Councilmember Jenkins?
Thank you for the history and that. I think as you get your feet wet and get to understand it, I think down the road, I may ask, do we need to revisit the policy minimum to recognize the risk and close that gap?
Yep.
So,
Councilmember Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one more historical perspective. Looking at the percentage of the budget that is for debt service is really small compared to when I started. Yeah. Because we were pushing 50% and there was lots of concern about, you know, is that too much? And now it's not even an issue, so.
right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming today, and, you know,
Thank you all very much.
letting us all know.
I appreciate the opportunity, and as I showed you on the schedule, I will be back. We'll discuss it again in about another month or so. So thank you very much.
Well, and I appreciate the committee really digging into this and asking questions as well, and really paying attention. That's what we can do for our communities as well, as keep track of that. That's the last of our information items. Next on the agenda are reports. I'll start just very quickly. Next Monday is the Clean Water Council meeting, and it'll be talking about public engagement, and they'll be going over the multitude and hundreds of comments they've got on the proposals that they're going to be funding. And so that live streams, if anybody wants to watch it from 9 to 3 p.m., I'll be in person. But it's really interesting that we've started, the Clean Water Council has this last year put together a new engagement plan to be really structured. And it's been sent out, and the amount of engagement coming back is tremendous, which is exactly what we're looking for, is how to spend this money with the same kind of mission of clean water for future generations. So if you're interested, I'll be there, and I'll bring back anything interesting if people want to do it. Committee members, you want anything going on that's exciting? Councilmember Lindstrom.
Yesterday, I attended the Regional Council of Mayors, and the discussion was actually related to our financial discussion, in that there was a presentation from the state demographer, and she almost gave a warning to cities about growth, population growth, and showed that Minnesota has looked very much like a hockey stick decade after decade after decade, except for about the last decade or so, where it's started to flatten out. And it's projected to grow, as we know, 600,000 or so population growth in the Twin Cities by 2050. But it's going to look a lot different in different parts of the region, of course. And it's going to be a slower, more gradual growth than we've seen in the past. So cities and the Met Council need to plan accordingly.
Appreciate that. Councilmember Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. MOSAC is on Thursday, so if anybody wants to nerd out on water supply, you're welcome to join us.
Well, then it'll be a party. Any other, Councilmember Wolf?
Remind me when and where the other customer forum is, the in-person one?
I know it's the 16th, but I was just checking my calendar. Somebody have the time that it starts? It's at the Metro Plant, and there will be a tour offer
Oh, yep.
afterwards.
Yep, let me check my calendar. I'll be there. Yep.
The afternoon starts at noon.
Thank you.
Perfect. So anybody can join us there as well for that. General Manager, any comments?
Just a real quick update. July is the month we send some of our folks to NACWA's summer conference, and they hand out the Platinum Awards. And we have 5 of our facilities in the Platinum category, which is 5 or more years. So we've got Metro Plant at 14, Empire Plant at 18, Blue Lake at 20, and the 2 that we really watch closely is St. Croix Valley with 34 and Hastings with 35, because they're like the top tier in the country, and we always watch to see if we're going to end up being the top. We're very close to that right now.
Well, that's a lot to celebrate, so.
Takes a lot of focused effort to stay on top of permits year in and year out, every single day, despite weather and all kinds of equipment, changing influent, all kinds of things that can make it difficult on any given day to keep on top of the permits.
And it's, I would say it's a real, I mean, it is a testament to the staff that you have and the people. I mean, you know, you've got equipment, but it wouldn't be where it is without the people that you've got day to day in and out.
And I have to say, you know, it's operating the plant is the back end of starting. We have to have the plans that show and support getting the right permit parameters to protect the receiving waters and to be able to operate to meet those regulations as well. So it is a much more owned success by all of ES, but the final permit scoring goes in through the plant operations.
Yep, so job well done on that. Any other questions or comments anybody like to share? Seeing none, then I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you so much for coming today.